Oh shit.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for our video podcast, MMA stories, and MMA news. Ed, bit of a slow week this week. We do have a little bit to talk about coming up, but we do have to catch up on some stuff from last week. Before we do that, how you doing, man? How's the East Coast treating you?
Good. I'm having a pretty good week actually. So nice to get a little. I mean, we're not really getting a break. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I know there is no UFC this weekend, and everyone's already fucking crying about it. But that's another story.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, I'll get into the UFC maybe a little later if we have some time. Before I bring down the show too early here, but looking back at last weekend, a couple of things we talked about. BKFC took place again in Denver. Lorenzo Hunt faced Chris Camozzi in the main event. Um, Surprising to most, fight went to decision, split decision win for the champ Lorenzo Hunt, who was a one-time two-division champion, uh, one of the top one of the top 3-4 BKFC fighters of all time, but he continues to win. Uh, like I said, real close fight. I think he won it. I think it was the right call. I was kind of pulling for Camozzi just for little. I always cheer for chaos. Anytime
Mhm.
that an upset or kind of a guy out of nowhere wins. So that happened. Josh Copeland picked up a big KO win in front of his family and friends. Um, Thought it was interesting. He interviewed before the fight. He mentioned first time his mom had ever come to one of his fights, and I thought, man, if you're really gonna, the guy's been around the world, fought everywhere, fought MMA. I'm sure he's done boxing and everything else. To
Mhm.
to bring his mom to his first fight being a BKFC event is that's getting thrown to the wolves. But
Mhm.
luckily for him, although he did get a little bit chopped up, he picked up a knockout win. So good event, fun event, typical BKFC. Um, uh, our boys Wheelock and Chris Lytle continue to do a great job on play-by-play there.
Mhm.
I think pound for pound they do as good of a job as anybody. When you have the knowledge of Chris Lytle, from actual combat and somebody who's fought bare knuckle, and somebody who has a long history in MMA, and then the genius that is Chris Wheelock. I mean, he's an encyclopedia on the sport, and he's
Sean
called.
Wheelock, yeah.
I mean, he's called. He may have called more events than anybody else in all of MMA history. I mean, you start to think about all the shows and the combat sports that he
Mhm.
does. So, um, but they do a
Yeah.
great job. They continue this week. Not a huge show, but they're in Virginia with Britain Hart, their champ. She's defending her title. Um, so you know, like and let me pull the card up real quick
Yeah,
here.
she's facing Melanie Shaw
There you
for the
go.
strawweight title. Trying to see if there's any other names and note that are on that card that'll
Dustin Pag, who fought in UFC's
Mhm.
co-main event, he's fighting Joe Elmore, who was a title challenger at one point in the Leonard Garcia era of BKFC. So, like I
And
said,
if you don't have the app too, you know what I mean? Like they literally they're showing those prelims everywhere. I mean, they have them on Fubo, YouTube, and Instagram, and even on Amazon Prime. I mean, like I when I was looking at, I was looking because we're gonna get into the Raw Tank Super like in a bit, but when I was looking to see if this Friday, because for some reason I thought this Friday's one on Prime Fight Night 14 was last Friday as well. It wasn't, but when I was checking the schedule, I saw the BKFC card schedule, the prelims anyway, and I was like, man, they're doing a good job of distributing the at least the prelims for everybody to kind of get into it.
yeah, they always show 2, 3, sometimes I think even 4
Hmm.
for some of their big event free fights. They definitely do a good job of attempting to get their product out. Obviously they don't have the backing of the big MMA
Yeah,
media conglomerate that can kind of push it. There's 2 or 3 big
I
media
don't I don't know
networks
if
that kind of push
if it's
everything.
big or just making sure you do the right deals because not for the PFL, they're having some issues with their broadcasting rights for their Paris stuff, and everyone's kind of like, well, why don't you just put it on YouTube? But it seems like, I mean, and it looks like ESPN just raised their prices yet again for their subscription service, or one is coming as I'm reading my Twitter feed as we're recording this. Um, their price is going up October 12th, and apparently I guess they're still under broadcast with ESPN, so that's the holdup of them just putting it on YouTube like everyone else does. Like Invicta has their broadcast deal with Access, but they still put their stuff on YouTube because they know not everyone has Access TV. And we just mentioned BKFC, and one puts their stuff up on their YouTube channel, for everyone to see, even after the event airs. So, I mean, maybe Chatri's numbers aren't as inflated as we thought, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They do a good job too, like you said, of trying to make their product accessible. It wasn't always like that with one. There was a time there
No,
was a random pay-per-view. There was times, it was
random, yeah.
really, really crazy hours and stuff like, not crazy hours for them, but crazy hours for us in America, who really they need to get aboard to. Maybe they're not going to say it because they're an Asian organization or they're they the American audience obviously brings the money, so they obviously want it. That's why they're on Prime here.
Hmm.
Hopefully they have a good deal there, and that's allowing them to keep it going. PFL, man, I don't. I mean, I didn't know about the ESPN thing being the holdup, but I
I
feel
don't
like
know if that's a holdup. I know that's a
I feel like
speculation. I'm
they're the
stealing that
worst
off
front.
of
I feel like they're the worst front promotion of almost all time that somehow continues to grow because I mean, how do you not like? They didn't even realize this like 2 weeks ago. We find out like 72 hours before the event that
yeah,
there's no broadcast set up. I mean, I don't know how you dropped the ball on that. Hunter Homicide we had on
yeah.
said it himself. Like, this is not hard to figure out. It costs about $5,000 to have an event streamed on YouTube, and every promoter basically knows that. So it just seems like it's always an oversight. I don't even know who the faces of that organization are anymore. Like you just don't like. They seem to have a bunch of money. They have some celebrities who are there,
It's
but
because there's like 4 or 5 faces that
yeah,
have
that
some
must be
sort
it.
of yeah.
But I just don't. I don't understand it. I mean, it really sucks. It's crazy to think that Bellator could be, but we argued for Bellator for a decade to give us the events in Ireland and Europe and across the globe like live. And we finally got it. Like 3 years ago, we finally got it. Now
Mhm.
Bellator might be bought by a company that can't stream events overseas again. I'm going, this is just, it's just crazy. So I don't understand how that's even possible in 2023. It just seems like it's an oversight. And to have Dumbe making his debut,
Mhm.
um, the former Glory, former
Yeah,
outstanding
that's what
kickboxing
everyone's. Yeah.
champion, um, to have him in the main event and making his MMA. I don't know if it's MMA debut, but his big time MMA debut. He might have had one warm up fight somewhere else. To not be able to show that is just stupid. It's
Hmm.
just is really 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 stupid. So um, there it is on PFL. I really don't want them to buy Bellator, but I think it's probably seems like there's a lot of smoke around that one. So
Yeah, I mean, well, whatever's gonna happen there is gonna happen when it happens. I'm not gonna bite on anyone's fucking lures that they throw out there just because they want to fucking act like they're the fucking insider of fucking cage fights. But I mean, we might as well just jump into Bellator 299 because for that event that was broadcast during that, I had to catch it later because shout out to Jaden Adesso and Gabe from my gym. They had a smoker in the UFC gym out here in New Jersey, and they both did well. So I want to give them a quick shout out on the podcast because I'm proud of them. Two young fellers trying to test the waters and of combat sports and see how far they want to take it. Um, but because I was at the gym supporting them, I didn't watch the event live. I got that, so I had watched it on replay. And the good thing about having it on YouTube and Showtime the way it is right now, you can catch those things in its entirety as it happened. I purposely stayed off social media so I could watch it like it was going on live, and I got everything I wanted out of that event because when we were looking at it, I talked about Aaron Pico's hands. I mean, and I like Pedro Carvalho. It was hard to watch him lose. Um, I didn't like seeing Daniel Weichel lose and retire. Um, and then obviously with the main event, Johnny Eblin, as expected, he's living up to his name, the human cheat code. But I got to see another dope choke from Luca Poclete, who I when I watched it, I tweeted, if he makes a BJJ Fanatic instructional, I'm buying it, because however he sets those things up, man, it's just, I don't know if it's wizardry or he's just mad strong and he forces those chokes on people to the point that they can't stop it. But the one that me and Nolan King called the submission of the year, I think that was last year. Um, that weird like cow catch, hip. It was like an inverted buggy choke, but standing. There's so many ways you could describe it. He's just like a choking machine, and that Bellator 299 delivered for me, man.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, I tuned it in actually at the JJ Wilson Barnui fight, which was outstanding. Some
Mm-hmm.
great transitions on the ground. Two guys that are really, really good on the ground. I was glad to see personally JJ Wilson get the win. He's one of the guys who was always on the prelims at the Bellator events I went to, and he's 10-1 now. I probably started him. I might see his debut. I mean, it was literally he seemed to be on all the cards on here in San Jose and
Mm-hmm.
San Diego and LA area. So great to see him to pick up a win. Um, and yeah, I mean, Aaron Pico did what we always thought Aaron Pico was always going to do. So, I mean, looked outstanding, used a little bit of wrestling, showed his strength in the cage, and then landed
Mm-hmm.
the big bomb. So that was, that was, like you said, you hate to see a guy get like Carvalho go down like that, but
But again, I
Pico's right
mean,
there,
yeah.
title shot there. There's some matchups now. Pico's reached that point where it's like, okay, now you can get a big dog, one of the big dogs again. Let's look at an AJ McKee or a you know
Yeah, and he said something in his post-fight interview where he was like, I signed up. I've grown up here. I was a kid when they signed me, and I became a man in Bellator, and that spoke a lot to like just his evolution from where he came from with the wrestling, and I know he did the pancreation and stuff when he was younger, but just his evolution as a fighter has been something fun to watch. But that power from day one has always been there, and I'm just like, those losses that when they happen early like that just goes to show how someone like him learns from the losses. I mean, they showed him trying to reset his shoulder again. They showed the footage of all that from how he came back from that and to perform the way he did. The guys built for it, and he's just I mean, that's definitely somebody that like Bellator made, and like for people like to knock on Bellator. That's why I'm wearing my Bellator hoodie. People like to knock on Bellator, about them only focusing on, they always chase old retired UFC guys. That's not Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico's from day one to his whole career, and look at him now. It's a fantastic fighter.
Yep, absolutely. You mentioned Johnny Eblin picked up the win. I mean, you talk
Mm.
about he suffered a massive cut in the
Mm,
second round of that
yeah,
fight, a cut that I'm actually shocked the fight wasn't stopped over. Um,
yeah.
I mean, it was as bad of a cut as I've ever seen be basically allowed to go in an MMA fight. But uh,
It
on
gave
the
him a sense of urgency,
on the
though.
flip side, he
Yeah.
also was the first person I feel like I've seen in a long time who realized that they were cut and went balls to the wall and
Hmm.
got the finish and I mean destroyed his opponent. It was really
Hmm.
pretty crazy how it happened. But I like to it's adversity. So we talked last week about where he could go and the levels of which he could go, and this was the first fight where like it was like, oh boy, like I don't even know
Yeah.
what the corner necessarily told him, but he had to have known. I mean, that was a big cut right over his eye, and even some of the stuff on Twitter afterwards was pretty
Yeah.
gruesome if you clicked on the wrong
Yeah.
photo there. But I
Especially when
mean,
they showed it opening
yeah,
up there.
yeah, when they butterflied it and stuff, and then so but just crazy to see him go in there and take out Edwards, who up until that point was making it, it was a competitive fight. Abel I believe, I don't know if he was winning on the official scorecards. I don't,
Mm.
who knows anymore, but he was winning the fight, but that elbow, the cut that he got,
Yeah.
was some serious
Yeah.
things.
Afterwards, in the post fight media, I want to write a piece about it over at My MMA News, because he got in like a little back and forth with Leon Edwards, who was cornering Fabian Edwards, and they asked him what that was about. And he just said it was kind of like, the emotions of everything that happened with the cut and their, the urgency. And, fighting is an emotional thing. Whether if you've never done it, then you don't really know, especially when the damage is as real as that. It's different from the training room than when you take damage the way that these guys do. So, like you said, it was good to see him have that sense of urgency, and that's how he picked up the win. But he called out. He actually said he'd like to fight. There was no beef, but he said he eventually would like to fight Leon Edwards because he sees him moving up in weight in the future. But obviously, that's a whole other. There's other hurdles to go over before that's even something to talk about. The real fight, because he called out. He's going down the rankings list, and he called out the homeboy Aaron Jeffrey in the media scrum. So if it looks like depending Bellator's plans in the future, if they're going to do another middleweight title fight, Aaron Jeffrey gets that shot, and and no one's earned it more than put in the time and earned it than Aaron Jeffrey. But that's going to be a rough fight for me to watch because I like both of these fighters. I mean, I'm Team Mullet, till till Aaron Jeffrey retires, but I would be remiss to say if I'm not worried for this fight because that's a two very tough young men looking to fight each other.
Yeah, it's not stylistically, it's probably not the best matchup for Aaron Jeffrey. But that doesn't mean he can't land a big shot. But we saw what John Salter was able to kind of neutralize him.
Mm,
So Evelyn might that's the issue that he has to grow from the Salter defeat.
mhm.
So I mean, you learn, and you see what happens. But I mean, heck, a title shot's a title shot. You go in there, and as we've seen, especially
Hey,
recently across the
uh,
whole MMA globe, anything can happen.
yeah, I'll tell you this about Jeffrey though. I mean, when I think of Aaron Jeffrey, and obviously I'm a fan of the guy. I talk to him often, through messaging or whatever, and I've interviewed him a lot since his days with CFFC. When I think about him in these scenarios, to me, he's like I always think about there's that line in the first John Wick movie about the man of extreme focus, and only because I know what he's when he puts his sights on something, he's gonna find a way. That's Aaron Jeffrey's edge. He's a man of extreme focus. So I'm not I can't write a guy like that off.
No, 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 I'm not writing him off. But, if it was a stand-up guy, if Edwards had won, to me, that would have been a better stylistic matchup for
Mm,
him. So, I mean, that's just all it is, but that doesn't mean he can't win the fight. Like I said, we've seen we've seen
yeah.
stuff happen all the time, and
I hope they
um,
make it, and I hope they make it in Connecticut so I can go there and cover it live.
there you go. I mean, it's next. It should be next in line. They got the West
Yeah,
Coast, and then they're going to
they're going to
Chicago, and
Chicago.
I mean,
Yeah,
it only makes sense as long as there's a heartbeat for Bellator.
yeah.
So.
I'd go to Chicago, but I'm not trying to get rolled.
Yeah, yeah, it's not cheap to go to Chicago right now
Yeah,
either. Actually, something I looked into as
yeah.
well. Um, the UFC fight from last week, we didn't talk a ton about it. Unfortunately, Rafael Fiziev suffered a knee injury in the fight. He actually kicked. I don't know if it was knee ankle. I don't know what the official injury was, but he threw a high kick. It was blocked, and something happened. But it was his pivot leg, so I don't exactly know. It just sounds like he
I know
mangled
they
one of his
posted it was
legs.
like one of the tendons, at MCL, ACL, something like that.
Okay,
So
so
so something
so
like
it's
that.
it's
But
ligament damage, so it's
yeah,
not good. But Gamrot picks up the win. He moves to 23 and
mm,
2. He becomes a fight and a half, 2 fights away
mm,
from a title shot if he's able to pick up a couple big wins. And he's got a great record. When you're 23 and 2, 25 and 2, 26 and 2 starts looking really, really good when you put that name on that poster.
yeah,
For an event, Bryce Mitchell picks up a nice win over Dan Ige. Marina Rodriguez destroys Michelle Waterson Gomez. Um, and that's really Tim Means picks up another knockout win. Guy keeps going there on the
yeah.
on the
I
prelims.
like it when guys from his like era, win.
There's not many left.
There's not
There's
many
not.
left.
It's filtering out quick. I saw another comment today. I don't even remember who said it, but um, it was basically once John Jones is gone, he's the last of the Zuffa champs.
Mm,
And um, I mean that's another generation beyond even what it's 2 generations beyond what we
yeah,
we grew up watching. As far as fighters go, but it is the truth. Jones is the rumors are that he's probably got a fight, maybe two, fights left, unless something really becomes interesting in that division. Um, it's definitely a changing of an era and a time for change in the UFC. I mentioned them a little bit earlier, so I just the price I received the prices today for UFC 296, and we've talked about in the past how it's a 1%er thing now. I was shocked at the prices. I mean, you're talking about a Covington Edwards main event. I mean, we're not talking Khabib, McGregor. We're not talking Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture. We're talking Covington, you know, uh, and Edwards, and it's like I don't. It's not even that great. There's some fun fights on the card. I wanted to go see Steven Wonderboy fight again.
Hmm.
If Ferguson's gonna have his last fight, or is he gonna expose Pimblett? I mean, there's a little bit of storylines. There's some fights. I'm not huge on that fight, but it's there, and it's kind of a freak show fight in a sense. So there's that.
Yeah,
I don't even
I'm rooting
remember
for
what.
Tony on that one.
Yeah, I don't remember what the co-main event was, but it's just a shame that they've gotten to the point where it's so expensive that, I mean, they've basically blocked me out of the market now. And I'm not rich by any means, but I've always figured out a way to put together money to go to a couple events a year and buy the cheap seats and just get in the door. And cheap seats to get in the door now. I mean, I can basically fly to Japan for a week rather than go to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's like it just doesn't. It's just crazy how we've gotten to that point. And I mean, I guess congratulations to the UFC. You've managed to completely knock out the middle class of the people that supported your organization and
Mhm.
helped it grow. Um, it's crazy that you've basically gave them the middle finger through everything, through just unsigned posters now being $30 and shit like that. Like
Mm, no.
you've milked everybody for every penny. You started with the European market. You went to Ireland. You did the same exact thing to them, and now you've taken the U.S. market and you've completely, uh, you know, liquidated it just to a bunch of money for you. And I don't know. I don't see how the sport grows. I think there's eventually going to be a huge downfall where this just doesn't pay off. The
Well,
end of the
yeah, I think they peak if they haven't peaked already. I think it peaks and then it starts turning. And then, but they're gonna peak. I mean, it's funny that the TKO merger happened because that's pretty much what I see happening. Like I always think about that thing CM Punk said when he first went over to AEW and did their first. I think it was the first pay per view he did with them. But people keep saying that it's not. Oh, UFC is not pro wrestling. It fucking is right now, and it's going to mirror it to the point that you have mixed martial arts fans or combat sports fans and UFC fans. Because CM Punk said you have pro wrestling fans and you have WWE fans, and that's pretty much what's already happening now. If in case you haven't, just check your social media about no fights this weekend. No, everyone's going to complain there's no fights this weekend. Yet we're going to talk about the one fight night on Prime coming up, which is a pretty fucking dope card, as well as the card that they had last Friday with the Muay Thai fights. Someone was joking around that one championship is basically a Muay Thai promotion with some MMA in it, and I'm like, you know what? I don't mind if that's the case. I like that they're mixing things up. They're doing something different, and it's easily accessible. And you got to the one time they came here, you had a pretty good time in Colorado.
and then you get the stupid ABC
Mhm.
trying to get their nose into that. Just
Yeah,
get shoo away. Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
I wrote a
We
whole
don't
thing
need.
on my newsletter. If folks want
Yeah, we don't.
to hear more on that, but
Too
it's
much fun. Too much
yeah.
fun in the sport. Too much reasonably priced tickets. Too much. You know.
Well, I compared it, and I mean, I don't know if you read what I wrote, but I did mention because we did mention it briefly on last week's episode, and I pretty much likened it to there's a scene in Casino where the local guy, the Clark County Commissioner, I think is his official title, and he's talking to Robert De Niro, and he says to De Niro and his whole outfit that's trying to run things in Vegas, he says to him, you're all you think you're home, but you're not. You're just our guests. You don't know how things work around here because he kind of like we own this, and that's pretty much if you look at we mentioned, like you said, with Mark Ratner. That's what I mentioned in the newsletter. It's all based in Nevada, and they have connections in Nevada, and they're pretty much flexing because now they have people that look at numbers and things that are trending. They have to see that they're hitting a wall. If they haven't hit a wall yet, they're hitting it soon, and other people are all ships rise with the tide, however the saying goes. So the UFC's risen. Now you've got all these other promotions kind of finding their way into people's homes the way one championship is. So um I'd say maybe by the end of their ESPN deal they peak, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go full streaming their own thing, like WWE Network was for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it happens, or we get UFC on USA Network. So
Yeah, who knows? I don't. It is what it is.
mhm,
I'm glad to see people finally starting to see the light. We've kind of hinted at it for a few years now. It's nice to see some people on Twitter that have a little bit louder voice than we do, starting
mhm,
to say their displeasure for what they're getting and for their dollar, and just the challenges that it takes to
mhm,
be a fan now of us of it, and just the sheer cost. It's just asinine to and then to hide in the Apex and not. I mean, the Apex cards are the cards that really could be affordable cards for people to go. It would be like the
mhm,
house shows for WWE or something. You basically would have that, and it would give people the opportunity to see your product without having to go to a WrestleMania. And it's just wild. But like I said, congratulations to them. If it was about making money, they're the kings of it. So,
yeah,
um, but I won't shed a tear when eventually something happens, and I mean, it'll everything works its way out. I don't think it gets any bigger. I don't.
mm,
How can it get bigger? There's no stars. There's no. I mean, once John Jones leaves, I mean, who is left? Who
yeah.
is
No,
who is this?
it's about the brand. It'll be more about the brand. You might have a couple of peppered in, fighters that are stars of whatever they determine that to be nowadays. But it's definitely about the brand now. It's not about the fighters, and I think that's been apparent for a little while now. But anyway, let's leave that where it is. We'll move on to fun shit.
Cool.
So, one championship. So what's funny is when I was watching Gabe and Jaden fight at this thing, one of my training partners came in late, and he because we were at a smoke, it was kickboxing, we were watching a smoker, so he happened to say to me, he's like, "Hey, did you watch fight Friday fight nights or whatever they call it from one championship, the Rod Tang and Superlek?" And I was like, I just looked at him and I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Don't tell me anything." He's like, "I have it saved and I want to watch it when I get home." And let me tell you something. If you didn't watch that, even if you're not a Muay Thai fan, watch the co-main event and the main event of that last Friday's show, because the fight between, and I want to make sure I get these guys' name right. I have it up here, so let me bring it up. These are the results. So, but never mind the results from it. If you haven't seen it yet, you had to. It's already a week past. They got stuff coming this Friday. We're gonna look at, but this fight right here, the I don't
Hmm.
want to. I'm not even going to try to attempt that name, but versus Amir Nasiri. That fight was like, I don't know if they sent a message to Rod Tang and Superlek of like, "Hey guys, if you want to get people excited about Muay Thai, copy us," because it was literally like I told my buddy, I was like, it was an elbow. It was like, let's see who can knock each other out by smashing elbows first, because they elbowed the shit out of each other in both fights. And people are still talking about the main event with Rod Tang and Super. Like, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, Matt. Did you say? I forgot.
I
I know.
I saw the majority of the main event, um, but that was all I caught on that Friday morning. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I love the small glove Muay Thai. I think they're onto something. I don't. I think it could pick up big here. They're pushing it. I mean, obviously, we don't know what the exact viewers are and stuff because of how it's broadcast here, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be well received. Like you say, people mention it. Um, and my only thing is, I would say like a fight like that main event should probably be 5 rounds. I personally would like to see 5 judges involved
Yeah.
instead of 3 like Glory does. I also am not a big fan of one scoring. I should be critical if we're gonna really praise him. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like how I mean, like so Superlick got a knockdown in the second round, and that essentially wins the fight automatically because
Yeah.
there's a rule where if there's a draw,
Well, I
then
mean,
they go back
but
to
here's the
the
thing. Like I said, because if you watch the fight before that, the Syrian, the other guy's name that I'm not going to screw up. Um, pressure also seemed to go into the decision because when I was watching it, and I agreed with the decision of the co-main event because the one fighter that whose name I can't pronounce was pressuring the guy a lot. Um, was he the one that won? I just cleared it off the screen, but the winner, the winner was the one that put on a lot of pressure and had him backpedaling a lot. Even though he was still firing back, he was still pressuring him towards the ropes. So it's not just a knockdown. I in my point of view, the knockdown cemented it, but he was still, he was doing the same thing to Rodtang. Now I know Chatri and Demetrius Johnson said they thought Rodtang won, and I guess it's because of you watching it the way that we normally watch anyway, significant strikes and all that. But I noticed the same thing happening in that fight too. So I don't disagree with what happened. However, I do disagree because he missed weight. So of course he was a little heavier. He could pressure Rod Tank to backpedal even if he didn't want to. You know what I mean? And they have to do it again. And if they do it again, they got to put it on one of these Amazon Prime cards because I mean, for folks that again, if you haven't watched it, it's on YouTube right now. Just go watch it.
yeah.
It's an amazing fight.
Yeah, let me clarify. I'm not saying that Superlek
Mhm.
didn't win the fight. I'm just saying in general they're scoring. So Rod Tank could win the first round. Hypothetically, he could win the first round. He gets knocked down in the second round, so it's 10-8 the second round, and he can win the
Mhm.
third round. But so in one scoring system, draws are not allowed. So even had the judges had it 2 rounds to one Rod Tang with that knockdown, it would have been a draw in America
Mhm.
or in most kickboxing scoring. However, one's process then goes, well, what was the most like devastating moment of the fight and who almost finished the fight? So it instantly like the it becomes a even though it could be in theory it could be scored a draw, it becomes a super lek win because there can't be draws and they would go to that knockdown as the deciding factor in basically the fight. So I'm not saying Rod Ting won the fight. It was extremely close though. As far as round wise, with the knockdown under that rules, you can clearly see why Superlek picked up the win. That's why I'd like to see 5 rounds and I'd like to see 5 judges, so you can kind of there's a little bit more of a less of a chance of an actual draw score, and and obviously 2 more rounds of action is something that fight would have oh my god it
Yeah,
was
no,
very
I was with the 5 round thing. I definitely wanted to see 5 rounds of that one, especially it was the main event. Again, whatever, however they do it, again they should put it on an Amazon Prime. I mean, Rod Tang, he had a nice pop, right? He fought in Colorado and he got a nice pop, right?
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't put him on the. I'm surprised this one wasn't an evening
Mm-hmm.
card because it's the we get to this evening card and it's Stamp Fairtex and she was another one who shined out there in Colorado
Mm-hmm.
and got a big pop by the U.S. crowd and Rod Tang was a superhero that night. So
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of surprised to allow them to allow that steam to kind of fade off. I personally would have done a Rod Tang Stamp Fairtex,
Mm-hmm.
1-2
Least, yeah,
headlining.
break it up. Yeah, like the way they have their cards broken up. We might as well bring that card up since you mentioned it. This Friday's one on Prime Fight Night 14. Yeah, it's 14. And you mentioned Stamp Fairtex. They actually have a. You're talking about how the pop that she got. They made Rod, as as our listeners know, there is a one merch shop that folks can buy a one championship merchandise from, but they actually have on Amazon separately from that for this event a Stamp Fairtex T-shirt that I put out the tweet earlier in the week when I saw it. I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool that they're actually selling their merch on Amazon too, just to kind of like an event exclusive T-shirt for this fight card." So check that out if you haven't checked it out. Pick it up. But this card I mean, John Lineker's on this card. Like this card is one of those ones that I feel like folks are just gonna randomly tune into, especially in the East Coast. Is gonna be fucking raining again here. Danielle Kelly versus Jessica Khan for my submission. It's the Atom Weight's title that they're. I think that apparently there's history between these two. I was watching one of their social posts. Um, so it should make for an interesting fight. But you got jujitsu, a bunch of Muay Thai fights, and
Yeah.
obviously some nice MMA.
Yeah, it's weird to see 4 female fights headlining the card. I don't know.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's but didn't they talk about that? I think they talked about that a lot
Yeah,
during the Colorado event, which I didn't see the broadcast, obviously, because I was there, but wasn't there a lot of talk about, like, 1 women or 1.
yeah. Well, when
Okay,
they announced the partnership, they were like, they wanted to feature a lot of women in the sport, and I forget what it was, but we actually did an episode on it. I remember because I said I wouldn't be surprised if Invicta wound up on Amazon Prime. I forget what episode
that's
of the
right, that's right.
podcast.
That was early on. Okay,
Yeah,
early
because
days.
it was when this whole deal first started, 14 prime events ago. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised because of that. I wasn't surprised at this at all. I mean, I think the it's the woman that's the head director of the programming and how things work on Prime Video is the one that said that's what caught her eye of just how many, with the female stars that fight at one championship is one of the things that got her interested in having them on Prime Video. So it's I'm not surprised at all.
I mean, the main event's a damn banger.
Oh
Stamp
yeah.
Fairtex versus Hamse he. Hamberley is how she was known as
Hmm.
in Ryzen for her violent style of fighting. So I mean, that's a banger fight right there. I honestly think Fairtex is probably in trouble in this fight. She gives away a lot of experience, and I think I think Ham is definitely going to push her to the limit, and it might be too much. I'm not super familiar with the co-main event, but you mentioned Danielle Kelly. She
Hmm.
obviously brings some other stuff to the table that one would love to see on
Hmm.
promotional posters and stuff. Um, so I mean, there's that. It's what can
Hey,
help make.
she's from the Northeast. I'm rooting for her to win. But I mean, I just saw the interview literally before we started recording, where apparently there's some history between them two, so it should be interesting. And the John Lineker fight, I mean, his fights have been fun as hell in one championship since he's been there. So I'm
Yeah,
looking
I
forward
would
to
have,
that.
I would have moved Lineker into like the co-main event. Maybe where the Danielle Kelly fight is, because Lineker's, it's going to be just fucking fireworks. Every one of his fight is. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, so it is like, is that the opening? They don't really have the main card broke down there. Let me see if uh,
no, they don't break it up by prelim. They're not on here anyway.
it looks like it's like, okay, everything's listed as a main card. So
Hmm.
um, that's how they're running it. So I mean, it's cool. Edward Foylang, uh, former I think he was former champ or in the
Hmm.
early days, um,
Yeah,
and
that's
Amir Khan, I believe he might have been champ or was, I mean, there's some of the names. Those guys were there in the early days of one.
yeah,
I mean, when you had Arlovsky and those guys, fighting in it.
yeah.
So um, fun card. I mean, I'm glad that you pointed this one out to me a little bit earlier, because I kind of, some of them slip through the cracks. Like I said, you don't see all the BKFCs and the ones always getting the push that, we'll hear about UFC nonstop, and but we don't without.
Yeah, no, this is that's what I'm saying. Like everyone crying about nothing to watch this weekend. This is what you should be watching on Friday night.
I think Fight Circus is this week too, so there's always they got to have some kind of 2-on-1 or 7-on-1 or something going on. I think Crazy Horse is fighting 2 people in the main event, so
Is
you
it
know.
this? That's on Fight TV? Don't they always have that on Fight TV?
Or I think it's actually free, maybe on the Fight Circus
Oh, is it
website
one?
or app, or I don't know. It's, again, you can usually find it through some stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's a circus show. Don't think that you're you're watching
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
any.
This
I mean, it is a
if you take
literal.
any of Fight Circus seriously, they call themselves Fight Circus for a reason.
The very first
Yeah,
bout on the card, I don't have it in front of me, but the first fight on the card is an actual MMA fight, and it's listed as boring ass MMA.
normal, boring MMA.
There you go. And I mean,
I guess because just because it's an
it's
actual
just
MMA
straight up
fight.
MMA, so it's just boring MMA. They don't have shovels and stuff in the ring,
Then
whatever else.
they have. I mean, they're gonna have a Lethway fight on the card. Yeah.
Gentleman slap fight, I think it was. I think that's basically where they wear suits and then they slap each other.
There's a two for the main event is what's he calls himself? Crazy Horse Charles Bennett Felony. He's fighting two guys, Bank, some guy called Bank and another guy called No Money.
Banking
So
no money.
yeah, so it's let me. I'm gonna if you're following me on Twitter, I'll retweet the card for you guys to check out There's a hockey fight on the card. If you're not familiar with Fight Circus, folks.
Yeah,
Um,
if you're having a couple drinks and you're just looking to have a laugh and watch some of the most nonsense stuff you could
yeah.
ever imagine happening in a ring, and some crazy play-by-play, and God knows what else Thailand's going to bring to the table. But it's funny, laugh out loud some
It's so
stuff.
you
So
anyone that takes himself too seriously with the combat sports coverage, watch some Fight Circus so you could lighten the fuck up.
you know.
So, but I guess that's it,
Anyways, I
man.
think that
Yeah.
kind of wraps us up. Yeah, fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, you can always check out our show at allaccessmma.com. Check out allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories. Also, check out the Bloody Good Show website
Bloody good show.
to to see our podcast as well, and the more names that magician seems to be working over there, putting together
Yeah,
a hell of a roster. So
he's gotten like fighters podcast and everything, and it seems to be like becoming a nice little podcast network.
no, he took a great idea, and he seems to be
Mm-hmm.
running with it and putting in some hard work, making the calls. And uh, it's not easy. It's not easy to line
No,
stuff up like that. So props to
no.
him for pulling that off. Anyways, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good night. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and be safe out there.
Peace.